Good morning. Here we go. I'm Heather Felton, a member of your parish committee, and we are very glad to see everyone either here or online today. A very special welcome to all new visitors, particularly student Rabbi Heather Renetzky from Temple Shir Tikva. Our mission is to build community, search for meaning, deepen our spirituality, and make a better world. To learn more about First Parish or Unitarian Universalism, please visit uuwayland.org or contact Kate Holland, our Director of Lifespan Education and Engagement. Also, please reach out to any member of the parish committee or to Reverend Stephanie if you have ideas or questions about First Parish. A very big thank you to everyone who is part of this service, whose names you can find in the order of the service. A note that to keep us all safe, we currently are recommending that those who are in person here in our beautiful sanctuary remain masked. All worship leaders who are unmasking this morning have tested negative for COVID. Please join me in taking a moment to say hello to all of us here, as well as everyone online. We can turn around and give a wave. Oh, it's front camera, sorry. My bad. Welcome again, and let our service begin.
I think we're getting that echo of the service from downstairs. So welcome to this special day as we come together, young and old, to sing and listen, and most of all, to learn. Who likes to learn? Excellent, you're in the right place. Whatever our age, we can all keep learning, keep asking questions, keep alive a sense of wonder and curiosity. Today we focus on learning more about Judaism. May these moments together teach us not only facts, but most of all teach us to love our Jewish neighbors a bit more, and if we identify as Jewish, to love that part of us a bit more. Now let us begin by lighting our chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism, and saying together our covenant as the Jorgensen family comes forward. I'll share again the story that the symbol of the flaming chalice was designed in World War II as part of the efforts of the Unitarian Service Committee to help Jewish peoples escape Europe. Today, as we light the chalice, may it also be a symbol of our continued commitment to fight against anti-Semitism.
With open minds and loving hearts, we gather to search for meaning and care for one another and to work together for
everyone. It's really nice to meet all of you. My name is Heather, and I'm the student rabbi at Shir Tikva. And I'm excited to start us off with a song this morning that feels really fitting. The words, which are in your order of service, are Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad, which means how good it is to sit together. So with that intention, we'll go forward. And I will say that for everyone of all ages, you only need to know two things to participate in this song. One is how to clap twice, so let's give that a try. Nice. And the other one is there will be a little bit of a repeat after me that's in English. Don't worry, no Hebrew required. And I will point at you when we do it together. So those words will be how good it is. How good it is. How sweet it is. How sweet it is. And then we'll say together, as the words say, to be together on this day. So, together on this day. Beautiful. So you'll pick up on it. I'll try to gesture. You can get up if you feel like your feet want to dance a little bit with all of this. And join me in whatever way feels good for your body. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. We'll try that part again. I think you'll get used to it. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is. How good it is. How sweet it is. How sweet it is. To be together on this day. How good it is. How good it is. How sweet it is. How sweet it is. To be together on this day. Part one. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is. How good it is. How sweet it is. How sweet it is. To be together on this day. How good it is. How good it is. How sweet it is. How sweet it is. To be together on this day. One more time. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. It's awesome. I hope you feel a little more awake in body and spirit. The echo downstairs is still doing the repeat after me.
It's not, I know it's not the TV. We don't know. Who knows? Okay.
A holy voice. So,
There's always something, right?
yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say a big thanks to student Rabbi Heather because Cantor Hollis-Schnappner and I have been planning this, and she got COVID on Thursday. So suddenly Heather was signed up to have this conversation, to lead us in singing, and just jumped right in. So thank you so much. And then this piece of the service we talked about as a conversation, and it was just going to be a simple conversation with a very simple question for you to answer. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
What is Judaism?
I heard that these services are a little bit shorter than Shir Tikva, so how much time?
10 minutes.
So gratefully, you are not the first person to ask that question, and I'm not the first person who has to answer it. So there's a famous story in our rabbinic literature, in our oral tradition, that says that someone came to Hillel this stage with this same exact question, said, "Tell me about Judaism on one foot." So I'm gonna attempt to repeat what he said on one foot. He said, oh, my balance is off. He didn't say that. He said, love your neighbor as yourself, the rest is commentary. And then he said, now go study. So that is to say that there is a lot to Judaism. It's a people, it's a culture, it's a religion, it's a philosophy, and at the same time, I think at its core is love your neighbor as yourself. It's a religion of doing and of reaching out to each other and reaching out from that place of connection and longing for connection. So now go study. There's more to say. I'll stop there.
Well, with the go study, that goes to, I know when we talked, you mentioned that you think of Judaism as 3 pillars of Judaism, and I think one of those is related to study, right?
Yes, exactly. So there's a few ways to try to encapsulate what I think is a lot to encapsulate, and one of them, another saying from one of our elders and from our oral tradition, I'm just plagiarizing a little bit, but trying to give credit where credit is due, is that there's 3 pillars: Torah, Avodah, and Milut Chasadim. And we even sing these words sometimes when we take our Torah, our holy scroll, out of the ark, and we sing, the world rests on 3 things: Torah, Avodah, and Milut Chasadim. And those mean this. So Torah is our holy book. And that's both the written Torah that you might have seen a scroll with the fancy writing, or what you might know as the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, and all of the rest of the writings, Proverbs, Numbers, Exodus, etc. And then there's also a whole rich oral tradition that's been written down of how did we make Judaism work and what questions are life. So that's a piece of Torah. This is learning and studying and asking deep questions. And avodah is the word for service, but it means more than just service. It means really relating to God by kind of doing God's work. And so I think of that a lot in terms of what does it mean for me to be on this planet, and what is my role on this planet, and how can I make the world a better place. And relatedly, Milut Chasadim might sound like a big word, but it really means loving kindness. And I think that that's about how we hold ourselves in this world, and that Judaism, I think, asks me and asks us to love our neighbor as ourselves, to see the God in everyone, and to see that divine spark or divine light or holiness, whatever word you want, everyone to interact with.
I was interested when I was reading this book here all along, and we'll talk more about that in the Ari for All. But one of the things that struck me that I didn't know when you're talking about the oral tradition, so I'm someone, and I think a number of folks also come from a Christian tradition, and so we're used to the Hebrew scriptures, or what Christians refer to as the Old Testament, which the first 5 books are the Torah, and then the other writings are, I guess together they're called the Tanakh. Is that right?
Yes. So to throw a little vocabulary out there, there's the Torah, and within Torah, Tanakh is actually an abbreviation for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, which is the 5 books, and then the prophets, and then the writings. So that's kind of like our scrolls about various other pieces.
And what struck me was that the earliest Judaism was based around the temple, which then the second temple was destroyed twice, but the second time in year 70 of the Common Era. And then they had to try to figure out, as I understand it, how do you, if our religion is based on the temple and now there's no temple, what do we do? And do I understand correctly, that's like where the rabbinic tradition comes from, the oral tradition?
Exactly. So if you can imagine that your whole religion relied upon coming to the temple every day, making sacrifices. I will say as a vegetarian, I'm glad we're not in that world anymore. But that's what it used to be, and suddenly the temple didn't exist, and you had a bunch of people saying, what do I do? And one of my teachers, Rabbi, who's wonderful, teaches that there were 3 different options. Some people want the option of saying, you know what, I'm done here. I didn't really love this anyway. This is my excuse, I'm out. Some people said, this is really hard, but I'm going to pretend that the temple is still standing and I'm going to try to make it work, which you can imagine that didn't go very well. And then there was a 3rd group that she says is kind of a fringy group, and that was the group of what we would call rabbis, which said, you know what, I love this Judaism thing so much that even if I can't do sacrifices, I want to find a way to recreate this. And so that is really preserved in the recordings of those conversations. So for example, just one tiny piece, they used to make sacrifices 3 times a day. And this new group of rabbis decided, what are we going to do in its place? And that's where you get prayer and the structure of service now. This idea of there's a prayer in the morning and the afternoon and in the evening that happens in Judaism. And they correspond it to times of the different sacrifices in the temple. So I think it's a cool reimagining and way of taking what's old and making it new.
And that reimagining continues today, right? So I understand there's like different, I mean, Judaism isn't one thing, right? There's a bunch of different, do you want to do like a big 1,000-foot overview of those big branches?
Totally.
Especially in the U.S.
Yes, I would say the biggest thing is that I think the way I can encapsulate how much diversity there is within Judaism is to say that there's a joke that if you get 3 Jews in a room and you ask them their opinion, you'll get 4 opinions. And so that's to say there are different denominations. So some of the big ones you might have heard thrown around are Reform, for example, which is where Shir Tikva locates itself. Conservative, not politically, but conservative in terms of religion, and Orthodox. And another one to throw out there is Reconstructionist, which I mentioned just because I know that there's a Reconstructionist community in Boston that actually shares space with another UU congregation. So in broadest strokes, those differ in terms of their adherence to tradition and how much they're saying, this is the letter of the law and we're going to follow the letter of the law, versus this is the spirit of the law and we're going to lean into that. So happy to say more specifically, but I'm trying to be brief.
Big, yeah. So what I'm not sure you know, and I suspect some of you all don't know, is that both of the Jewish congregations in town first met here at First Parish. So congregation, I think, well, Shir Tikva came first, right? Yes. I was going to say, you guys, we weren't here. Some of you were. So Shir Tikva came first and met here, and now they're a Reform congregation, and they're about a mile up the road. And then Congregation Oratid came, and now they're a mile up the road that way. So so it's been a gift, and that's part of who we are as Unitarian Universalists, is that sense of recognizing that the divine, the spiritual insight comes from many different places, right? And which is why you do have UU congregations. Of course you need space. You can come to our space, and use our space and those kinds of collaborations. So awesome that, you just, apparently the entire Shir Tikva staff ended up getting involved with, being here today. But on Sundays, this isn't your holy day, right?
It's not. So our holy day is Saturday, and it actually starts Friday night. So Shabbat, or the Sabbath, as you might have heard it. And it's there's a lot to learn about the Sabbath. If I'm going to make one book recommendation in this moment, it's going to be Abraham Joshua Heschel's The Sabbath, which is a beautiful description of what this day of rest and day of, I think, disconnecting and reconnecting in certain ways inspires. So I will say, for all of you kids in the building, though, know that there are kids at Shir Tikva right now who are also in their religious education program. You call it Rabbi, right? Yeah. So I think that's a cool parallel, that we're both doing our own learning on Sundays, but on Saturdays, that's when we would come and do services together, and there's a lot of singing and celebrating.
So are you saying that kids come twice on the weekend?
Believe it or not, they do. So, and part of that is because on our Saturday mornings during our Shabbat service, oftentimes we have what's called a mitzvah, which is
turn on your Zoom mic, please.
to a coming of age in the sense of a way of marking a particular ritual moment where, believe it or not, when a kid turns 12 or 13, we say that they're an adult, which might terrify some of the adults in the room, but it has its own.
Great. Lee, I think I figured out the problem. Can you turn the direct input knob all the way down? We're getting the feedback from Zoom. That's what's happening? Okay, thank you. And I'm also getting on the chat that my mic is clearer than your mic. So if you're okay,
I'm going to do my best to, maybe if I hold my mic here.
Okay, we'll see. Otherwise, we'll end up sharing. So in terms of services, it sounds like you do, what we're doing here today is different for us, but also kind of similar, where we have spoken word, we have the symbolic lighting of the chalice, we have music, and we have me talking more, and we also often have a story. But we also have a moment of prayer or meditation. And a sort of moment of stillness. Is prayer also part of your services? Or can you tell us a little bit about what your services look like?
Yeah, great question. So our services, the main services that we have a Friday night service and a Saturday morning service. That's what you would see if you came to Shir Tikva. And in some ways there are a lot of parallels. We light on Friday night, we light our own candles. And we do a combination of prayer that's singing and songful, and also prayer that's read. And I will say that one notable thing is, I feel like I should have brought a prop, but we use a siddur, a prayer book. And so a lot of our prayers are actually fixed, and there are words that I find discomforting sometimes. I want to be able to offer gratitude, and I can't summon the words for it, and I have a siddur, a prayer book that I can open and read the words from, and we read them together as a community. And then there's also a part of every service that has a little bit of that meditative element. We have something called the Amidah, and it literally means the standing prayer. But that prayer is a time of silence where we start in prayer together out loud. And then it's time where our framing is often literally, please pray what's in the siddur or on your heart. So it's an open invitation to either use words already decided or whatever you're feeling. Like it's a time to connect with God or the universe, or to look outside and admire the trees, whatever is kind of calling to you in that moment.
You also agreed to do a meditative moment for us as part of that element of the service. Would you be willing to lead us in that? And
yes.
Why don't you turn that mic off and take this, unless you need to.
Great.
I doubt you're clapping in your meditative moment.
For this one.
Okay.
So there's different forms of meditation within Judaism, and one that I really love and Cantor Hollis really loves is called a nigun. And a nigun is a wordless melody. And there are lots of different stories that get at this idea of sometimes words are not enough. Sometimes we can't find the words to say what we want to say or to connect in the way we want to connect. And so this only requires some syllables, a lie, 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 a nai, 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 a yai, die, die. Choose your favorite consonant or vowel. And so I'm going to lead us in a moment of taking us through this nigun, this wordless melody. And I invite you to jump in if it moves you, or to sit and take it in, or to take a moment and reflect on what it is that you are feeling in your heart today. Yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 yai, nai.
Thank you. I think one of the differences of our services, I understand it, is it's part of our tradition to have an offering during the service, which I understand is not something that you typically do. Yeah. And so this is the time for our offering, where we receive gifts. And what I think is common, but I know that both of our congregations are supported financially by the gifts of the members. We're grassroots driven, right? And congregational polity too, I believe. Yeah, sorry. I teach polity. I don't know. So which means you're governed at the local level. And so it is the gifts of the people that enable us to be together. So thank you for the generosity of your gifts. You can give online at uuwayland.org/donate, or the boxes will come forward. And as that happens, I think Heather has one more song for us to teach us.
Thank you. And I have to say, I have these words coming to mind that are printed in our Siddur, in our prayer book, right before that standing Amidah, that prayer where you can kind of reflect. And it says, pray as if everything depended on God and act as if everything depended on you. And it feels really compelling in this moment of both a context in which we pray to and what and with whatever we feel compelled, and we also act in a way of saying, this is my contribution and my way of being in this. And in that spirit is this next song that I wanted to teach you, which is called Olam Chesed Yibaneh, which Olam is world, Chesed is again that kind of loving kindness word, and Yibaneh is will be built. And so the words of this prayer are mostly in English, plus that Olam Chesed Yibaneh, and the words say, I will build this world from love, we will build this world from love, then God will build this world from love. So again, that idea of praying or reaching out or reaching to something bigger than ourselves, and also seeing our own part in that making the world a better place. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yananai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yananai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yananai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai. We're going to keep that tune. We'll do that part one more time so you get used to it, and then our first part will be, I will build this world from love. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yananai, 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 I will build this world from love. Yananai, Yananai, and we will build this world from love. Yananai, Yananai, and if we build this world from love, Yananai, then God will build this world from Yananai, nanai, yananai, nai. We will build this world from love. Yananai, nanai, yananai, nai. If we build, and if we build this world from love. Yananai, 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 nai. Then God will build this world from love. Yananai, nanai, yananai, nai. Olam chesed one more time. Olam chesed yibaneh. Yananai, nanai, yananai, nai. Olam chesed yibaneh. Yananai, nanai, yananai, nai. Olam chesed yibaneh. Yananai, nanai, yananai, nai. Beautiful. Beautiful to sing those words together as if we're building this world together.
Thank you so much. So, I'm going to give a benediction in a moment, and then Polly will play some transition music, and you have a choice, which is you can stay here and continue the conversation with student Rabbi Heather and myself, grounded in the book here all along, but really just continuing to talk and answering questions you may have. If you are online, you don't need to do anything. You just stay in the main session to stay in that conversation. That conversation will happen here in this room. Our other choice is we have Rona Leventhal, I believe, is her, I don't have my notes here. Rona is a Jewish storyteller, and she will be down in the vestry with Kate for you to hear some great stories from the Jewish tradition. So I'll say the benediction, and Polly will send us some music, and you can head on out to your choice, or stay or go, as you wish. Sustained by our connections to each other and to all that is holy, let us go and be beyond these walls, bringing more light and life, love and justice to our shared world. Amen. Excellent, okay. And people online, can somebody throw in the chat, can you hear me okay with this mic level? We're trying plan B here. Actually, I think we're down to plan C, but anyway.
Yeah, it's true. For all that we evolve and change and build beautiful things in this world, technology continues to have a life of its own.
Such a headache. Okay, well, I don't see any complaints, so I'll take that as a good sign. And I just want to point out, thank you to Polly for playing George Gershwin, who, if you're not aware, is a Jewish composer. So that was lovely music. I love that music. Okay, the professor and me has to ask, how many of you did your homework? No. Has anyone here actually read the book? Okay, good, excellent. I did too.
I didn't do my homework.
You only had
To
40
be fair, I got
hours
the assignment late, so.
And what was it? Okay, so I am quieter on this. So I'm going to talk loud here. So you might want to turn my mic down in sanctuary. I'm going to try and talk loud so that people online can hear me okay. Sorry, we're figuring this out. So the book, the book was recommended by Heather Renetzky. And if you don't know, it's called Here All Along, Finding Meaning, Spirituality, and Deeper Connection to Life in Judaism After Finally Choosing to Look There, by Sarah Hurwitz. Sarah spent time at Shir Tikva, I understand, as a kid.
Yeah, apparently she grew up at Shir Tikva, so I hear. And I will say that I guess toward the beginning of the book she talks about a synagogue that she was like less impressed by, and that wasn't Shir Tikva. It was wherever she went after that. So let the record show.
It's good to be clear. And then she went on to be a speechwriter for for the Obama administration.
Yeah.
So it's a very well-written book. And like I alluded earlier about some of the things that I found interesting, but one of the things in the introduction that I thought was so interesting, I wonder if it resonates with your understanding of Judaism, is that she defines Judaism as a family. So it's not based on beliefs. I am a Jew if I believe X, Y, and Z. But it's more like I'm a Jew because I'm one of the green black kids.
Yes.
So I wonder, so I'm curious about how you resonate or don't with that idea of Judaism as a family and as a story of a family.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I feel like both in the way that I think about even how we relate to our text and what could be turned in a belief way is often we invoke our matriarchs and patriarchs when we pray, right? So we hearken back to like, this person was my mom and is your mom too in a particular way. And I think about the conversations that I have with people where they ask about my Judaism, and often the first question is, did you grow up doing XYZ, or did your family do XYZ? And I think that speaks to the way that it is such a family and a connection. And I feel like one of the big tenets of Judaism, I'm going to sound repetitive, but this love your neighbor as yourself is so much a part of it. And I don't know how much she talks about it, but this sense of really being responsible for one another is really present in Judaism. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what practices you do or don't do, what laws you follow and don't follow, Jewish laws, not like state laws, and what you believe or don't believe about God. It's like, are you part of my community? If you're part of my community, then I'm bringing you food when you're sick, and I'm taking care of your kids when you need help, and I'm reaching out to make sure you're okay. And that feels like such a big part of Judaism.
She does talk about that doing piece, but she does it as it's that if you meet another Jew, you're less likely to say, what do you believe and what do you do?
Yes.
Or specifically around, what practices do you keep kosher? prayer,
Right.
what are your ritual practices? Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, I think that is really true, and I actually feel like part of my work as a rabbi is to help affirm for people that whether you answer yes or no to the do questions, you are just as Jewish as the person next to you. So I think that comes up sometimes, that people have a self-consciousness of, oh, I don't keep kosher, I don't follow the Jewish dietary laws, so I'm not a good Jew. And my answer to that is like, do you take care of your neighbor? Are you kind to people? Then you are a perfectly good Jew. It doesn't matter what you do. But it is so ingrained because that doing is so much a part of our tradition. We, in some ways, do Shabbat every Friday. We have a sacred meal together where we break bread together and we light candles. And so there is a lot of action involved. I don't want to belittle that. I just want to emphasize that it's about so much more than that in the family way that she talks about, that we're connected regardless of what we're doing at the end of the day.
You know me, I'll just keep asking questions, but I want to leave space too. If you guys you've already been hearing us talk for a bit, do you have questions? They don't have to be based on the book, but just on Judaism in general, and then I can bring a mic to you. I see Ann and then Lynn. Okay.
This is a silly question.
No such thing.
When you gave the meditation, you had a tune that you sang with. Is that a tune, or did you make it up?
Oh, I am not that talented. It's a tune that I actually dug to try to see who exactly wrote it, and there were a few different credits. But in general, there's lots of tunes floating around the Jewish world and great Jewish musicians. So if you're looking for more, I have where to point you. But I did not write it.
What makes someone Jewish? Is it self-identification? Is it belonging to a temple? Is it being born into a Jewish family? What?
Great question. It depends who you ask, is the sort of annoying answer. As I talked about before, there are various denominations within Judaism and different Jewish communities. So some Jewish communities would say that it's actually defined by birth, and more than that, matrilineally. So if your mother is Jewish, it doesn't matter whether you love or hate or have no relationship with Judaism, you yourself are Jewish. That's kind of one piece. And I would say that's its most traditional, and beyond that, it really depends who you ask. I have a dear friend who actually grew up UU and ended up converting into Judaism, and what she said was, for her, the reason why she went through a formal process, which often involves a lot of studying and meeting with a rabbi and defining faith for yourself, was she said, I didn't want to just be in Jewish community, I wanted to be Jewish. And for her, I think it was kind of self-defined. It didn't have so much to do with whether or not her mother was Jewish. It had to do with wanting to feel, again, part of a family and part of a community. And the way she felt like she could become part of that family was by going through this learning, through this engaging with not just avodah, with serving, and with gemilut chasadim, loving kindness, but with Torah, with text.
We also have a question online, which is, how can we better address the periodic arising of anti-Semitism as evidence now?
Oh my goodness, I wish I had an answer.
There's another article in the Globe today about the rise of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I don't have an answer, and I'm, again, a broken record. I feel like my answer is ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. I think part of the way to combat anti-Semitism is to see Jews as people, like we are all people, and to see people who are Jewish as individuals. So I think the more that we can build those relationships, like doing something like this, and the more we can learn and ask questions, I think makes a big difference. And I will say that Judaism has a big emphasis on asking questions, so don't be afraid to ask. Asking a question is a great way to learn more, and I think learning is a great way to combat anti-Semitism too.
Joel?
Joel Angelo. lovely woman who grew up in the Orthodox community in Brooklyn. And they together keep Shabbat, and they keep kosher household and all that. But she left the Orthodox community, and it was very difficult for her. She's deeply in love with her parents and her brothers, but she felt the role of women in the Orthodox community was difficult for her. And as a woman in the Orthodox community, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, I think Judaism, like every tradition, has its ways to grow and change. I think across the Jewish spectrum, there's different, I hate the word levels, there's different kind of ways of including people. So I think in the Orthodox community, what I imagine she struggled with, and I want to be careful what I speak about here because it's not my community, it's often a lot more delineated by gender. So for example, men are able to have access to certain kinds of prayer or certain kinds of learning and study that women aren't. And someone from that community might tell you that it's a way of honoring women in a particular way. I don't feel that way personally, but I think that it's hard. We all have what we wrestle with. I think for a tiny example, in my community, grew up being told that a particular practice of wrapping tefillin of phylacteries was not something that women did. And then I kind of moved in my communities, and I found a community that empowered me to do that, and that was really powerful. So that's a little bit of a non-answer, and I would be curious what she would say, but I think that Judaism both makes space for women in a number of ways. As you can see, I'm in rabbinical school. I can be clergy as a woman in the particular place in Judaism I place myself. And there's a lot of hard stuff in our tradition. There's a lot of stories I read that I don't love, or ways in which in our communities we have to work on fighting the patriarchy like we do in the community and world at large.
And as a follow-up to that, I wonder if you could comment about the path and inclusion of LGBTQ folks in Judaism.
Yeah, so you might have seen in my bio, this is a bit of a passion of mine. Before rabbinical school, I worked for an LGBTQ Jewish organization, and I think it's been a journey in Judaism, and I'm grateful to say that a lot of the Jewish community now is more embracing, and in the communities I find myself in, it's not even a question. I am just as much a part of the Jewish community as a person in the LGBTQ community as anyone else. And again, I think in the Orthodox world in particular, there's a lot of challenge for people who are LGBTQ, and it sometimes pushes people out and pushes people toward other parts of Judaism that are more welcoming.
Yes. I'm just looking at my notes from the book. She had a whole chapter about life cycle rituals. We haven't really talked about that at all. What are some of the major life cycle rituals within Judaism and how they celebrated?
So life cycle rituals are kind of my jam. I like to joke that I'm a bit of this is a goofy thing to say, but a bit of a death nerd, which is to say that I think Judaism holds us in various moments. So I talked about the bar bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah ceremony, which is that coming of age way of saying you're not just part of the Jewish community, but you own this tradition as a Jewish adult. And there's also kind of the covenantal ceremonies when we bring a child into the world that I think are really powerful and have grown beyond just circumcision, which is the one that I think most people are familiar with. And around weddings, there are various traditions, and one that I want to highlight is actually, I think Judaism is really amazing at holding people in grief and loss and death. So there's particular markers of how you act in the days leading up to someone's burial. Then you act differently in the first week of grieving. Then you act differently in the first 30 days of grieving. Then you have a way of remembering them on the anniversary every year. So I think that there's an acknowledgement in Judaism of the fact that structure can sometimes be really helpful in emotionally tumultuous times. And I'm happy to get more into the details or share one-on-one about it, but I think it's really it's really beautiful. And specifically around those end-of-life rituals, a lot of the emphasis is around holding people, again, in community and in family. There's a certain prayer that you say when someone dies that you can only say if there are 10 people in the room, which I think is a beautiful nod to that connection.
So in the book, she sort of mentions the other life cycles and spends most of the chapter talking about death rituals.
Oh, great. So I'm happy to talk about the other ones and fill in there.
but I think that's interesting. And she talked about the mourner's kaddish, which you need 10 people to say.
Right.
And she told a story about how an office where it was hard for the person in mourning to leave and go find people to say, so they created their own minion, is that right?
Yeah, that's the right word.
Of 10 people to say at the office in a conference room or whatever in order to support that person in grief, which I just thought was lovely.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful.
And sitting Shiva, I think people have heard that phrase. So you want to say, I think that is something we're sort of half familiar with. You want to say more about specifically what that is?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to know about too in terms of this question of how do you love your Jewish neighbor. So sitting Shiva is something that we do after someone has died. People will traditionally take up to a week in their house where their job is to be taken care of, which I think is really beautiful. In its most traditional form, people won't cook. They literally won't change their clothes. You're probably not going to find that in your communities, but the sense is to say, we know that you are grieving and that sometimes in that acuteness of grief, it's hard to take care of ourselves. And so the tradition is for people to show up with food. We love our food. And to, sometimes it's giving someone a big squeeze and a big hug. And those visiting hours of sitting Shiva will often be time to just connect with the person and to ask, what are you remembering about this person that you've lost? Sometimes you might encounter what we would also call a minyan, a gathering of people to say certain prayers. And if you find yourself in that space, I think you can take it in. But trust, if you know that someone is sitting Shiva, that your instincts as a human being for what another human being needs in a time of grief is enough.
So it would be appropriate for us to go into someone's house that's sitting Shiva?
Yes, absolutely. So it's not a Jews only thing at all. It's really about who's in your connection and your wider family.
I do have to say that I've done a number of interfaith Jewish Christian weddings.
Yeah.
And I've learned the tradition of smashing the glass at the end. And that sense of once the pieces are smashed, you can't go back. It's sort of like once you get married, you're married, and things are different now. And it's really interesting. I mean, I've talked to other clergy about this, because with the Christian side, the kiss, you want to, now you may kiss the bride and everybody gets excited. But in the Jewish ceremony, it's you smash the glass and everybody gets excited. So you have to time this in a way so that the excitement levels, you both get plenty of excitement. I don't know if you've ever done an interfaith wedding, but I don't know, Patrick, you ever do an interfaith? You know what I'm talking about? Absolutely. But is there more to say about smashing the glass and Jewish weddings that we should know about? I think that's another place we sometimes go to Jewish weddings for.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a great touch point. I feel like there are so many. I feel like for every Jewish or interfaith wedding you go to, you'll probably hear a different version of why we smash the glass in the 3 Jews 4 opinions kind of way. So I think one is what you're talking about a wedding and that kind of union being a particular moment. I think another is actually the hearkening back to the destruction of the temple. So it's a way of saying in this moment of utter and absolute joy, it's important to remember both what's been broken in our own history, and some people will say what's broken and needs fixing in our world. And I think that it's a beautiful way of, in the Jewish wedding, I think it's focused on the couple, and there are ways in which the vision and the focus expands outward. So we think about the couple and we think about who's witnessing that wedding is really important. And with the smashing of the glass, we also think about the entire world and what is that couple's role in healing the broken world.
Last year I did a sermon on the phrase Tikkun Olam.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is healing the broken world. And it was interesting to me to realize both the depth of that phrase in Jewish history and in reflection, but also the ways in which it's evolving to really focus more and more on social justice.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a phrase that you, it seems like you've been sort of alluding to that. Is that something
Yes,
that
I've been trying so hard to avoid jargon, and Tikkun Olam is a phrase that you will hear a lot in Jewish spaces. I think it's become such a core of communities, especially today. So if you walk into a place like Shir Tikva, you'll notice that there's a commitment to doing what they will refer to as Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. And that's everything from, in some communities it'll look like advocacy, in others it'll look like, gathering food for a food shelf. It can be about, again, reaching out to a neighbor in need, but it's really a core piece. It's like if you were to poll Jews about what Jewish values are important to you, I'm going to guess, but reference surveys, Tikkun Olam would be at the top of that list.
We still have a few more minutes. Are there other questions? I warned her about you, Patrick.
And I will say in general, don't be shy. I'm okay with saying I don't know.
So,
Patrick, you got to put it right up.
referencing the book a little, and I've seen Sarah's different talks and whatnot, but being both Reformed, this is my question, but it's really for you personally. How much do you see Reformed Judaism as kind of a deconstruction to touch the heart of God, opposed to a rebirth of ancient rituals and traditions to touch the heart of God? And so often I think in spirituality, we deconstruct and strip away, and I think that's what she's done a little to get back to her root, to back to who she is. Yet at the same time, rituals comfort us. Rituals, yearly ones, help us keep connected. And I personally wrestle with the both, the deconstructing and the constructing. And I wonder how Reformed Jews do that.
So that's a great question, and I will complicate the you personally part of this, which is to say that the school that I go to for rabbinical training is actually specifically pluralistic. It doesn't affiliate with a particular movement, and I was drawn to that school because I feel like I don't fit into a particular box. I feel like I go to one Jewish community and I feel like Goldilocks. I'm like, I want a little more tradition, or I go to another one and I say, I want a little more modernizing. So I don't want to speak too much to Reform Judaism in particular. There's a lot of I'm in a class right now that's deep in the history of how did the Reform movement come to be, and a lot of it was in response to wanting to be part of the wider community, to saying that our Jewish family is important, but how do we make our lives more permeable, and how do we relate to our non-Jewish neighbors? So it's interesting. I think in some ways Reform Judaism does move away from the most traditional or the most in the box as a way of saying, you know what, if this doesn't work for you in Judaism, like leave it on the shelf kind of thing. And I think there is something lost when you leave something on the shelf. So that's to say that from a personal place, it's one of my primary questions that I wrestle with within Judaism, is when I come across a text that's hard for me, or when I come across a behavior that I'm asked to do according to Jewish law that's hard for me. Am I going to say, forget about it? Am I going to say, let me interrogate this and land on, yes, I'll do it? Or am I going to say, yes, I'll interrogate this and land on, this practice is not for me? So I'm wrestling with similar questions.
One of the things that I really appreciated about how her treatment of ethics and spirituality is along those same lines, which is that she makes a distinction between being a good person and a great person. So a good person, you can be a good person in the world, do good, be respectful, civil, things. But she experiences Judaism as pushing her to be a great person. So moving beyond the strict, I follow the laws, like the state laws.
Yes.
And instead, she had a section about gossip. And she's like, I work in DC, there's gossip and, you think it's information. But she was then challenged to push herself, or even following the Sabbath, right? What does it mean, especially in a society like ours, where we're busy, to pause and to experience that kind of life
Totally.
without that push of consumer purchasing or doing. And so I think it was interesting that she was really trying to find her way to more spiritual depth, while at the same time making it clear like there's certain things like I'm not good with, like this patriarchy stuff,
Right.
king language, you know. So I thought that was, I learned a lot from that personally, really good.
Yeah, I think it's powerful the ways in which Judaism can push us to be a greater person. I even think about the words that I say in the morning. I have kind of a prayer practice daily, and I think of it as almost like priming me of when I'm reading these words about God being loving. How does that make me a more loving person? And I think that there are some people who would say prayer practice is not for me, and they're going to find that way to engage with that invitation from Judaism to be more loving in a different place or a different way.
Well,
Excuse me.
always a minute earlier, but we are off. We're past 11, so we're going to finish up, but give you a minute to say anything else, closing words that you want to add?
I don't know what to say other than gratitude to all of you, and to say that Judaism is really expansive, and I think has a lot of wisdom to teach us, as I think this book gets at. So if you're looking for wisdom around a particular topic or interest area, I'm happy to point you to what Judaism has to say about it, not because it is the right thing, but because it's one of many traditions that I hope you feel like you have access to, and I want you to feel like Judaism can be yours too.
Thank you again very much for being here today. And I don't know what the situation is with story time downstairs, but maybe we can try to exit out the front instead of walk through the vestibule.